This morning's gospel is scandalous, to say the least. What goes on here has almost everything wrong with it in a typical life of a person in Jerusalem. We hear that Mary and Margaret are entertaining Jesus. Now, this is a very sad day for them. If we recall what happened just prior to this, Lazarus has died, and they called Jesus, saying, "If you were here, he would have lived." What we have this morning in action is acting out a story very similar to the prodigal son, also known as the forgiving and gracious father. In that story, we hear that the son has taken his inheritance and squandered it, and now comes back offering to be a slave to his father if he will let him come back home. This morning, Jesus has gone to Lazarus' grave after 4 days. There is absolutely no question that Lazarus is not alive. And yet he goes to the tomb and says, "Lazarus, come forth." And he does. And so now they are at Mary's home. And they are talking. And she does something completely scandalous. Much like the father who would accept the son back. Mary undoes her hair and takes a pound of costly perfume and anoints Jesus' feet. Oh my goodness. Everyone in the room would be caught not only off guard, but would be in shock. But two things have happened wrong here. Number one, as a woman in public, you would never let your hair down. And number two, even worse, you would keep track of your hair, and in wiping his feet, she would do the equivalent of wounding her hair in front of people, which is completely wrong. And we hear somewhat of the shock that's going on now from Judas. Well, why would you use perfume that we could sell for 300 denarii, in essence, a whole year's wages? Can you imagine what's really going on here? Well, it is quite simply this. Mary has gone from, in John's gospel, darkness to light. She has gone from doubt to faith. She knows whose Jesus is, her Lord and Savior. And so she does this unbelievable act. You see, washing a person's feet in Jesus' day was left to the lowliest of slaves, the lowest on the totem pole. And so by this very act, Mary is declaring she is giving all of herself to her Lord and Savior. And as she does that, the perfume, the smell of the perfume permeates the whole of the room to let everyone know the fragrant message and the promise that comes from turning your life over to Jesus. It's a message true for us as well. Yesterday we were challenged with the death of George. And as we gathered together to celebrate his life, we talked that we could look backwards in memory and see death, or we could look forward and see resurrection, a new life of promise. And in that Mass of the resurrection, we celebrated our turning from looking backward to looking forward. And that's exactly what Mary is doing in this morning's gospel. And it challenges each one of us. As followers of Christ, we are asked, do we truly believe? I think sometimes, and I'm quite personal on this one, I'll share a story. I think sometimes engineers make wonderful Christians for all the wrong reasons. And I know in my case, a lot of times what has happened is I have spent a lot of time saying, but why? Or questioning or having doubt. And engineers tend to do Occam's razor, keep pulling it back until what's left is the truth. And in some ways, that's what's happened for me over many, many years, doubting God or doubting Christ. And then knowing from prayer and presence and with talking from other people just how real God is in their life and in my life. We had an opportunity last night, and it was kind of fun. We went to dinner with our dentist, and he's a funny guy. A lot of fun, and when we met around the table, it's okay, Dr. Steve, he says, it is absolutely not doctor unless you're in the office. Call me Steve. Okay, we're good with that. And so we began to talk, and here's a special thing about not being in the office. Half our time is talking about how his mother and father had brought him up in the church, and how he was an acolyte, and how he was now an usher, and how he was a reader. These are stories that I think a lot of people don't have permission to tell. But they should. And it's up to us to give people that permission. One of the greatest privileges I had, I think, is when I worked at General Electric, there was an elder gentleman there, well respected by everyone, especially the technicians, and they were union. And I had a hard time figuring it out until one day, I think I've shared this story, the finance people came in and said, you honestly have to start cashing your checks. It's wrecking our books. Well, he happened to be the CEO who had retired and came back the way he started, as a technician. And then we started to go out to lunch together, and it was amazing being able to talk about the church and how having Christ in his life and me being able to tell him how having Christ in my life made a huge difference in the way that you approach life. I think this morning's gospel challenges each one of us that as followers of Christ, we make decisions that change the way that we live, that truly affect our lives. I know when our children were young, for us that meant that they didn't play soccer because it was on Sundays. They went to church with us, they prayed with us, and we ate together. One of the amazing benefits today is that it is a comfort to both myself and Kim that when our children run into hard times, they do something that some of their friends seem perhaps outrageous or scandalous. They take time out, they take a breath, and they pray. And they ask for God's guidance. And then we talk. Imagine that. Perhaps I'm oversimplifying it, but from the people that I have met over as many years as I have had the opportunity, I find that when I meet and talk with Christians, they have a completely different hope than others. For they know the truth, and they know the story, and they know the presence of God in their lives, so that when we ask, we are given. And we know that Christ will be with us and walk with us, and be with us and share with us all the days of our lives. Jesus, at the end of our gospel, said, Mary gets it. let her tell the stories. Perhaps it's the same command to each one of us. Tell the stories so that others can not only hear, but begin to believe.